Hey guys, what's up? What's up? It's me again. And of course, all my little monsters back here on Philomania, where we dive deep into the amazing, mysterious, and sometimes totally insane universe of collectible pocket knives. Today, yep, you guessed it, we've got another unboxing, and this one's a little special. I've actually been waiting on this package for quite a while now. It's a pre-order that finally made its way to me, and man, I've been counting the days. So, this came from a company called NC Blade. Now, if you're into the high-end knife scene, you probably know them already. But if not, let me break it down real quick. They're a US-based distributor, actually, I think the only official distributor for Custom Knife Factory, aka CKF. That's a Russian brand, or, well, let's say formerly Russian. See, things get a little fuzzy when it comes to where the knives are actually produced. Some say it's Eastern Europe now, maybe not technically Russia anymore. You know, politics, geopolitics, and the whole second Cold War vibe we're all living through in 2025. The tension between the US and Russia is no joke these days, even if trade is still sort of happening under the radar. But yeah, brands have to play it smart. Nobody wants to trigger any red flags just for trying to sell some titanium and M398 to the wrong market. Anyway, let's get back to the fun stuff. And huge shout out to Brandon. Seriously, that guy is the best. He's always been super responsive, super helpful. Like, I'll just shoot him a message asking, hey, got anything cool coming in soon? And he'll keep me in the loop. Even with items that aren't listed yet on the site, he's just one of those guys that really takes care of his customers. I've done a bunch of business with him, and it's always been solid. All right, so listen up. I got a sticker here. Yeah, probably gonna end up giving that one to Jacob. But hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's get to the real reason you're all here. So here it is, the classic. You know the drill, that signature Custom Knife Factory pouch, super recognizable, same packaging they always use. I actually just sliced into it a bit while opening the box with another knife. Yeah, that happened. Rookie move, but no biggie, just a little scratch on the edge. Nothing major. All right, let's take a deep breath, and here it is. The long-awaited, much-anticipated Snafu. Man, I've been waiting on this one for ages. Let's start with the basics, the specs and background, straight from the maker. This is the 2024 edition, so yeah, hot off the forge. One of the most recent production runs. The designer? None other than Peter Rassenti, a North American knife legend with deep Italian roots. The guy is a serious heavyweight in the knife world. He's been designing high-end blades for years, tons of iconic models under his belt, and he's always bringing innovation to the table. Now this time around, he's teamed up with Custom Knife Factory to bring one of his classic designs into a limited production run. The blade steel is M398, and if you know, you know, it's super high-end stuff, crazy edge retention, excellent corrosion resistance, and just all-around badass steel. As for the handle, this thing is almost entirely titanium with carbon fiber inlays that give it this stealthy high-tech vibe. And yeah, the handle's integral, meaning it's milled from a single chunk of titanium. Right here, you can see the signature of the guy who did the final tuning. Every detail on this knife is dialed in, and this here, this is the serial number. Gotta hold on to that for authenticity. Always important when you're collecting pieces like this. Let's check what else is in the pouch. Okay, looks like we've got some goodies, extra washers made of Teflon, always nice to have backup hardware. Some standoffs, spacers, and little tuning bits for maintenance. Honestly, CKF is really good about that. They always throw in some spare parts in case you ever need to tweak or repair something down the road. Super thoughtful. But alright, enough talk. Let's get to the moment. The first time ever holding the snake in my hands. Whoa. Just, wow, seriously, this thing is something else. And here it is, just like I imagined. Actually, well, maybe I imagined it just a little bit bigger. You know how sometimes when you've been waiting for a knife for so long, your mind kind of builds it up into something huge? That's what happened here. I was picturing this massive beast, but in reality, when I finally got it in my hands, it's a very well balanced. It's not small by any means, but it fits the hand really well. Once you hold it, you get this sense that it was made to be carried. Now, when it's closed, I'll be honest, there are a couple of edges here and there that feel a bit sharp. Around this corner especially, it has a bit of a bite. Not dangerous or anything, just a little uncomfortable if you're fidgeting with it too much in a closed position. And that makes a huge difference in how the knife feels up top in this area around the spine where your thumb rests. It's incredibly comfortable and smooth. There's a kind of seamless elegance to it. And check this out, you've got carbon fiber inlays on both sides, front and back. Adds that slick, modern vibe while also cutting down just a little on weight. And yeah, it looks awesome. The lock is a titanium frame lock, and here's something cool. It comes with a replaceable lock bar insert. You can actually swap it out down the line. That part, the little hardened steel insert that touches the blade tang when the knife is locked open, can wear out over time. Especially if you're flipping the knife open and shut a lot. So having the option to replace that insert is huge for longevity. That's top-tier design right there. And remember those spare parts we saw earlier in the pouch? Yeah, one of them was that exact lock bar insert. Comes right in the kit. Really thoughtful from CKF as always. All right, time to talk about the action. Let's go. Flips open the knife. Yes. Oh man, wow, just wow. This thing flips like it's alive. It's like the blade wants to jump out of the handle. I barely even touched it and bam, flies open with authority. And man, the smoothness on this thing, it's unreal. Seriously, the way this blade fires out, it feels like a custom-made knife. Not something from a production line. I'm talking full-on bespoke action. It's that clean. Here, check this out. Watch carefully. You see that? Right there. That's the detent. You can feel it. It holds the blade just firmly enough so it doesn't fly open unless you mean it to. It's like, it's got that satisfying little resistance, and then, wham, you're there. Fully deployed. Rock solid. Zero hesitation. This thing doesn't just open, it flies. In terms of action, I'm giving it a straight up 10 out of 10. No question. And I'm not exaggerating here. This is, hands down, one of the best opening actions I've ever experienced on any knife I've handled so far. And yeah, I've tried a lot of knives. This one just feels next level. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about a knife that sits in the high-end tier. This isn't your average EDC you toss in a drawer. It's a premium piece. And when you really take a close look at it, you can see the attention to detail. Every surface, every edge, every angle, it's all been thought through and executed with care. You're not going to find this kind of action on just any knife. Not even on other knives from Custom Knife Factory. I've got a few CKFs in my collection, and they're amazing, no doubt, but none of them have the click and fly feel that this one delivers. And a big part of that, it comes down to the design. And that's all Peter Rassenti. Like I said before, the guy's a legend. And when you've handled enough of his work, you start to recognize that signature feel, that precision, that soul. Oh, and don't forget the blade steel. Like we mentioned earlier, it's M398. And look here, this knife is actually serialized. Yup, mine's number 96. That's right, hash 96 out of the total production run. Always cool to know exactly where your knife sits in the line. Now, just for context, this wasn't some off-the-shelf purchase. No, sir. This was a pre-order. I paid a deposit to the dealer in the US, and from there, they actually placed the build order with CKF, so this thing was literally made for me. Now let's break down the blade. This one's got a drop point profile, which I personally love. Super versatile, great for EDC, great for slicing, piercing, whatever you need. And check this out, it's got a little groove running along the flat of the blade. That's called the fuller. Some people call it a blood groove, but in this case, it serves a way cooler purpose. It's actually perfect for doing what knife guys call a Spidey flick, named after Spider-Man, of course. The idea is, you stick your middle finger into that groove from the back side of the blade, add a little pressure, and then snap. The blade flicks open with a satisfying click. It's one of those things that takes a bit of practice at first, but once you get it down, man, and it works beautifully. Nice and smooth. So yeah, this knife gives you two opening methods, the flipper tab, which already feels amazing, and the Spidey flick through the fuller. And together, that's just badass. Seriously, dual deployment options are always a plus in my book. Now, while we're here, let's address these little notches you see on the blade near the pivot. You might think they're thumb studs or meant for opening the knife, but nope, that's not the case here. In this design, they're actually stoppers, not openers. Their job is to keep the blade from over-rotating when it opens. So just imagine the level of precision machining required to make those tolerances perfect. To make sure the blade opens exactly to the right point and then stops right there every single time. No wiggle, no misalignment. That's serious engineering, and speaking of wiggle, let me be super clear about this. Once this blade is locked open, it has zero play, like none, nada, no up and down, no side to side, no weird movement, nothing. It's a rock, just solid, locked in confidence, exactly what you'd expect from a knife in this class. Now let's move on to the blade finish, because it's one of the things that really stands out. This blade actually has two different finishes, and that gives it a super refined look. Up here, on the large flat areas, see that shimmer? That's a satin finish. It's smooth, reflective, and gives the knife a clean, elegant look from certain angles. When the light hits it just right, you get that classic shine that collectors love. Then, starting from the grind, the part of the blade where the cutting edge begins to thin out, you'll notice it changes. That area has a completely different texture. It's got this soft matte finish, which looks like a bead blast, or at least something very close to it. That bead blasted section is a lot more muted, way less shiny than the satin flats. It gives the blade a kind of tactical, stealthy vibe. It also helps hide wear and fingerprints, which is always a plus if you're actually planning to carry and use the knife. Honestly, it's a beautiful combination, elegant and practical at the same time. And this kind of dual finish treatment, it's a signature move from Custom Knife Factory, or CKF, as most of us call them. You'll see this on a lot of their higher-end releases. They love to mix finishes to highlight the geometry of the blade, and man, it just works. Also, look closely here at the top of the blade. You'll see some additional machining going on. These little cuts, right along the spine, they help flatten and taper the blade. That reduction in spine thickness gives it better piercing capability. The fuller, that groove we talked about earlier that helps with the spidey flick, it seems to share that same matte finish as the grind. I'll double check the official product specs later on to be sure, but from what I can tell just by looking at it in person, it's finished with the same bead blast texture. It's those kinds of subtle details that really elevate a knife like this from good to exceptional. Alright, now let's move on to something really important for usability, the jimping. Up on the spine of the blade, there's this row of raised ridges, kind of like little teeth. That's your jimping, and I gotta say, it's pretty aggressive. Like, these ridges aren't subtle at all. When you press your thumb down on it, especially during precision cuts or when applying pressure forward, it grips. And not in a gentle way. Honestly, it kind of hurts a bit if you push down too hard. I mean, it's effective. It keeps your thumb locked in place and prevents any slipping. But personally, I would have preferred the edges to be just a little more rounded off. That way, the jimping could still do its job without feeling quite so sharp. But hey, I'm not really complaining here. At the end of the day, it's a small nitpick. The upside is that, on a knife that's this refined, they still took the time to add a reliable traction point. Think about it. This knife has a super smooth carbon fiber inlay and polished titanium everywhere. It would be easy for your grip to slide around, but with this aggressive jimping, your thumb stays put. So I get why they went for that. Now let's take a look at the pocket clip. Anyway, the clip itself. It's very straightforward, minimalist. It's got a clean linear design, no curves or flare, just a practical piece of metal doing its job. Nothing fancy, but honestly, that's kind of refreshing. It's secured to the handle with 2 Torx screws, and I'm guessing those are either T6 or T8. Totally standard stuff. Overall, I think this pocket clip is going to work just fine. It looks like it'll ride pretty deep in the pocket, and because it's flush with the titanium frame, there shouldn't be any snagging or awkward catching on fabric. Simple, functional, and low profile. One more detail I noticed, at the very end of the handle, there's a subtle little ridge. Sort of a rear traction point, kind of like the jimping up front. It's just enough to give your pinky or the base of your palm something to grip when you're holding the knife tightly. So between the jimping on the spine and that ridge at the butt end, you get this nice anchored feel. The knife really locks into your hand. That's what I love about good design. It's not just about looks, it's about functionality and the details. I'm actually glad it's not that big. Because, let's face it, when a knife is too long, it just becomes a pain to carry. It starts sticking out in the pocket, bumping into stuff when you sit down, harder to conceal, just kind of a hassle. This one, I'd say it hits the sweet spot. It's a little longer than average, sure, but not by much. It's got that commanding presence without being overkill. Definitely not in the oversized category. Now, just to give you guys a visual comparison, let me bring in another well-known knife. Here it is, the XM18. Yep, Hinderer fans, you know this one. This is the standard size XM18. Let's line them up side by side here, just so you can see the size difference clearly. From this angle, the Hinderer might look a bit bigger, but keep in mind, that's partly due to the camera angle. Sometimes the knife closer to the lens looks larger than it really is. So let me shift them a little, get them perfectly aligned. There we go. Now you can clearly see it is actually longer by at least a couple of centimeters, maybe close to an inch, depending on where you're measuring from. Definitely the longer of the two. So yeah, not a small knife by any means. For reference, this other knife I'm showing here, the Hinderer, it's also a USA-made knife, and we'll definitely be talking more about it in another video. I've got a lot to say about it. It's a super well-known, well-loved brand in the community. Collectors go crazy for it, and it holds its value like gold. But that's for another time. But hey, we'll talk more about that knife in a future video. I'm just using it here for a size comparison since the XM18 is such a popular model. Now let's talk about something important, weight. Let's not just guess it, let's actually throw it on the scale. Alright, in ounces, because we're in the US and that's the standard here, this knife comes in at 5.4 ounces. That's about 152 grams for those of you who use metric. Now, personally, I think the sweet spot for everyday carry, what I'd consider the comfortable range for most people, is somewhere around 4.4 to 4.7 ounces. That's the range where you still feel like you're carrying something solid, but it doesn't drag down your pants or make its presence too obvious throughout the day. So yeah, at 5.4 ounces, not dramatically heavier, but enough that if you're carrying it around all day, you'll know it's there. You'll feel a little bit of that pull in the pocket, especially if you're wearing lighter pants or moving around a lot. That said, it's not a deal breaker at all. I mean, we're not talking about a brick in your pocket here. It's still totally carryable. And let's not forget, this isn't just a tool, it's also a high-end piece of craftsmanship. You're carrying titanium, carbon fiber, and premium blade steel. A little extra weight just comes with the territory. Some folks even prefer a bit more heft in their knives. It makes the knife feel more substantial, more planted in the hand. But I know others lean the opposite way. They like their knives light and discreet, under 4 ounces, so they kind of disappear in the pocket. You almost forget you're carrying them, and that's totally valid too. It all comes down to personal preference. Before I forget, there's one last little touch I want to point out. Right here on the pivot, you'll notice a beautiful little accent. It looks like a zirconium inlay just on one side. And man, it's subtle, but really classy. Zirconium is this special material. It's technically a metal, but it oxidizes in this super unique way when it's heat treated. It gives off these wild iridescent hues, blues, purples, even hints of deep acid green, kind of like what you're seeing here under the light. It's not just eye candy, it's a little signal that this is a premium piece made with love and attention to detail. And that wraps it up for now, folks. Let me just say, in hand, this thing feels every bit as high-end as it looks. There's no question, you can tell immediately that this is a premium knife. It's not some budget folder you grab off Amazon or a random listing on eBay. Nope, this is a limited production collector's piece. These are serialized, meaning only a small number are ever made. Then they're gone. You won't find these flooding the market. They're not mass-produced year after year. And that exclusivity, that rarity, that's part of what makes owning a knife like this feel so special. You're not just buying a tool, you're owning a piece of knife culture, something made for people who really care about design, steel craftsmanship, and everything that comes with it. All right, my friends, that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, me and all my little monsters are heading out for a quick break this weekend. But don't worry, we'll be back real soon with another episode of Philomania, diving even deeper into the knife universe. Take care of yourselves, stay sharp out there, and hey, do whatever makes you happy. Catch you in the next one. Peace.